I've spent more than $200 million on Facebook ads over the past 12 years, working with more than 3,000 clients in just about every industry you can think of. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the entire process of creating a Facebook ad campaign and an Instagram ad campaign from scratch. So if you've never created a Facebook ad before, or if you have, but you're not 100% sure that you set up everything correctly, this is the exact video you need, because I'm going to show you every single step and setting you need to get right. So before we dive into the fun stuff and start putting our ad campaign together, we first need to get our account structure sorted. And what I mean by that is creating a Meta Business Manager account, because your Business Manager account is what holds all your Meta ad assets. So things like your ad account, your Facebook page, your Instagram profile. To do that, you want to come through to this page, which is business.facebook.com. Now, in order to set one of these up, you will need to be logged into your Facebook profile on the browser that you're using. The process is really straightforward. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate it because we already have tons of accounts. But if you just come through to this page, make sure you're logged into your Facebook profile, go through the process. Meta's just going to ask for a few simple bits of information about your business. Just very simple, very straightforward to go through. Once you've done that, you'll be taken through to your Meta Business Suite. And this is what it looks like, although yours might look different if you haven't got, the things like your Facebook page and your Instagram profile added as I have here. The Meta Business Suite is a really useful tool, something to know about for later on. You've got things like Inbox, where you can manage comments on your Facebook and Instagram ads. You can respond or delete them, etc. You've got Lead Center, where you can manage the leads you generate via instant forms. More about that later on. You've got Creator Marketplace, where you can find creators and influencers to help promote your products and services. Lots of useful stuff in here. But what we want to do is go ahead and click on Settings, because we need to finish setting up that structure that I talked about earlier. And it's this settings page where we can add in those meta ad assets that I referred to earlier. So make sure we get your Facebook page in your Business Manager account, same with Instagram account, etc., right? And by the way, yours might look a little bit different because you're not probably going to have more than 100 people added to your Business Manager account and more than 1,000 ad accounts. We literally have more than 1,000 ad accounts in our Business Manager, but that's absolutely fine. You'll still be able to follow along with the process. So let's start with the Facebook page. I'm going to go here and go over to Pages, and I'm going to click on this ad down here. So we've got a few different options, right? We've got add an existing Facebook page. So if you already have a Facebook page, something you're definitely going to want and need to run ads on Facebook, right? Then what you want to do is move that page over into this Business Manager account. You can request shared access to a Facebook page. So if it's linked with another Business Manager account for some reason, maybe you've had an agency working on some stuff for you, but you also want to get it added in here, then you can go with that option. Or you can just go ahead and create a new Facebook page if you haven't got one and need to do so. I think most of you are going to be adding an existing Facebook page, so let's demonstrate that. So if I go ahead and click on that, it's very, very simple. You just go ahead and add in the Facebook page name or the URL. So you just want to go ahead and paste the URL to your Facebook page in here, as I've done just there. Once I select this, it's going to say, page is already in your business portfolio, so I can't go through the rest of the process, but it's very straightforward. You just go ahead and click next. Don't worry about review people, we'll cover that in a minute. And then you just request approval. So you're basically sending an approval to whoever the admins are of that Facebook page already. That's probably you, that's probably your Facebook profile. You probably get a notification and an email. You could just go ahead and approve, and then that page will be moved into this Business Manager, and you've taken care of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do Instagram accounts next. Same process, we go ahead and click on add. Oh, a quick warning about adding an Instagram account in here. Only Instagram professional accounts can be added to a business portfolio. If you add a personal account, it will be switched to professional. You want a professional Instagram account for your business anyway. If you're going to be running ads and operating as a business, that's fine. So once you add it in, it'll be switched, no problem. You've got to agree to the terms, and then you go ahead and click on add Instagram account. And then this process is really straightforward, right? So you just need to log into your Instagram account. Again, if I try and do this, it's going to say it's already added in there. And then you just provide access by logging in. You don't even then need to approve via a notification on the other end. So really straightforward just to go through that. Let's go ahead and cancel. Okay, next let's do your ad accounts. So we've come into ad accounts and we go ahead and click on add. Again, we've got a number of different options. So you can create a new ad account. If you've never run an ad before, you've never boosted a post, then you probably don't have an ad account. You can go ahead and create one. You just want to go ahead and click on create an ad account and then enter in the information that Meta asks for. Ad account name, so you just put your business name in there, select your right time zone, select your right currency, make sure you get these right. If you don't, it's very difficult to change them later on, so just make sure, this is defaulted to US dollars, but I'm in the UK, so most likely I'm going to want to change that to GBP, to pounds, but just go through the process. I'm not going to go through it like I've explained for previously. We've already got plenty of ad accounts, but go through the process, very straightforward, and then your ad account will be created. If you already have one, like I said, if you've ever boosted a post, if you've ever run an ad, you do have an ad account. And what you want to do is add an existing ad account. So you click on this and you just add in your ad account ID, you paste that in there, Click confirm. Again, a notification will be sent to whoever currently owns that ad account, and you need to then approve that. Very similar process to the Facebook page. I will show you in a minute, once we get into the ad account itself and start creating the campaign, where to find your ad account ID in case you're unfamiliar with that process. So those are the three that you really need to get added in. You need your Instagram account, your Facebook page, and your ad account. There are other stuff you can look to add in, WhatsApp accounts and other business assets, data sources, all sorts, but that's really what you need to get started. And you'll see as we go through this process, I really want to make getting your first Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns up and running as easy as possible. We're not going to mess with all the various advanced settings and features. That complicates the process and becomes a barrier to entry. So let's keep it simple. We can add complexity later on. The other quick thing I want to mention is around people. This might not be important for you right now if you're only the one who's going to be managing your Facebook and Instagram ads, the only one involved in that process, but at some point you might want other people to be involved. So let me just quickly show you how this works. If I go ahead and click on invite people, you then just need the email address that's associated with their Facebook profile. You can add that in there and then send them the invite. Again, they'll receive a notification, they need to accept it, and then you can assign access. I won't go through that process because I can demonstrate it elsewhere. And then once you've got someone added, like I've got here, you can go ahead and click Assign Assets, and you can say, look, I want them to have access, for example, to this Facebook page, and I want them to be able to run ads or deal with content or have full control over absolutely everything. So you can give people differing levels of access so they can work on the things they need to be able to work on without having to give them access to everything. So it's quite a neat solution to be able to do this. You want to do that process with yourself, with your own profile. Make sure you get yourself added and give yourself the various assets that you've added in here, Facebook page, Instagram account, ad account. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too complicated. That's our structure set up. What we now need to do is go ahead and dive in and actually create our ad campaign. So you can create ad campaigns from within the Meta Business Suite, but I'd recommend you do so from within Ads Manager. So if you go ahead and click on these three little lines, all tools, you will see Ads Manager here. And then if I click on this, you've got a few different options. I want you to come through to the Campaigns tab. If you go through to Account Overview and think, hang on, this looks very different to everything Ben demonstrates, not just in this video, but potentially in my other videos, just because I'm basically always in the Campaigns tab within Ads Manager. So now we get to the really interesting part where we can start creating our Facebook and Instagram ad campaign. Oh, just quickly, I mentioned around grabbing your ad account ID earlier to be able to move an ad account, an existing ad account into your Business Manager account. You can just grab that up here, right at the top. You'll see that, so you can come in and paste that in and get it moved over. So the first thing to know about Meta ad campaigns, about Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns, is that there are three levels to a campaign. You've got the campaign level, and then within that you've got ad sets, and then within ad sets you've got ads. And each one of those stages is responsible for different things around what people see, but also who sees it, various settings, budgets, etc., etc. We're going to go through all of it, but that's the first thing to understand. And you can have, for example, multiple ad sets within one campaign, multiple ads within one ad set. So it's very much that sort of structure. So we want to start by creating a new campaign. So make sure you've got campaigns out of those three selected, and then go ahead and click on this plus green create button. And there are a couple of settings that we need to choose right at the beginning, because whatever we select here will impact the options available to us later on as we go through the campaign creation process. Don't worry about collaborative ads, more of an advanced thing. We're going to ignore that. Not for today, something I talk about in other videos and you can move on to later on if that's something that you want to do. But two things we do need to talk about are the buying types and the campaign objective. So we've got two different buying types. We've got auction and we've got reservation. Auction is just the cost of your Facebook and Instagram ads is going to be determined by simple market forces, demand and supply. More demand, higher cost, less demand, lower cost. And that's demand from advertisers, by the way. How many advertisers there are, how much they're willing to spend. Reservation, you can actually guarantee a certain price, often a lower price, and the cost of Facebook and Instagram advertising is normally measured in CPMs, so cost per 1,000 impressions. So it's cheaper to use reservation, but that's not the option I'd recommend you use, which might sound bizarre. Here's why. In order for Meta to be able to guarantee that lower cost, they are going to put your ads in front of lower quality prospects or lower quality ad placements. The better quality ad impressions are usually seen through auction, and that's a big deal. So I'd recommend you go with auction. Let's move on to campaign objective. So we've got 6 different options here and they do different things. And your campaign objective is really, really important because it's going to inform how Meta optimizes your campaign. So you're basically saying to Meta, this is what I want, and Meta's really powerful machine learning and AI-based systems are going to optimize your ads, work out who to advertise to, what time of day, how often, all those things to get you more of what you want. That's why it's so important to get your campaign objective set up correctly. So we've got awareness. Awareness is where Meta will put your ads in front of people that are most likely to remember them, put your ads in front of as many people as possible. Not an option I typically recommend for beginners or for businesses operating with a relatively small Facebook and Instagram ad budget, because it can be quite an easy way in those scenarios to spend a bunch of money and not really see anything back for it. What we see with awareness is it can work really well for larger businesses with big budgets, because awareness takes time and it takes a lot of ad impressions across a lot of people over an extended period. Bigger businesses have those budgets, smaller ones and beginners to Meta ads typically don't. There is an exception, and that's if you sell a high ticket or expertise based service, then you might want to use my omnipresent content strategy, which typically does use awareness. I'm not going to cover that in this video, just wanted to quickly mention it. You'll be able to find a video about my omnipresent content strategy on my channel. So if you meet that criteria, maybe go ahead and check that out. But otherwise, for most of you watching this, I would say leave awareness alone for now. Then we've got traffic. Traffic is designed to optimize for as many link clicks as possible, or as many landing page views as possible, to get as many people from Facebook and Instagram to your website. Now, a lot of beginner Facebook and Instagram advertisers use traffic. They think, great, I'll send a load of traffic to my website. I want as many people as possible. I'll then generate my leads, sales, etc. from those people. It's not typically the best way to go, though, if you do really want purchases or you do really want leads that can go on to use your services. There are better options that we'll get to in a minute, because Meta's optimization system is very literal. So if you say to Meta, I want as many link clicks as possible, Meta is very good at finding people that are likely to click. But those people don't necessarily go on to convert. Other campaign objectives and options might be better at, yes, generating a few less clicks to your website, but the people that do arrive are far more likely to go ahead and take the next action. Sometimes we are forced to use the traffic objective if you cannot optimize, you cannot track a purchase on your website, or you cannot track who becomes a lead. Let's say, for example, you're sending traffic through to a third-party site where you can't track the actions that people take once they get there. Well, then you may be forced to use traffic. Engagement is what it sounds like. A campaign objective is going to optimize for likes, comments, and video views, basically just getting people to engage with the ads themselves. There are use cases for engagement, but I'm not going to go into them here. Not something I typically recommend most beginners use. The vast majority of Facebook and Instagram advertising beginners want to use either leads or sales, and I'll talk about both of those together. That's what we really want from our Meta ad campaigns, particularly if we're operating with a small budget, particularly if we're getting started, because you want to generate those leads, generate those sales in the short run to provide the profitability to be able to reinvest and scale your campaigns and your business. And that's the whole point where we're running ads in the first place, right? So leads and sales are much more direct response marketing. And if you select leads, then Meta will optimize your campaign for people who are likely to go on to become a lead. If you select sales, Meta will do likewise. The decision between which one of these two to use is, what does your sales funnel structure look like? If someone comes through directly to your website and makes a purchase, go with sales. Meta can track that. You could set up so Meta can track that quite accurately, and then you're good to go. If, however, people book in a call with you, or they sign up for a free quote or something along those lines, they don't actually check out with you online, then go with leads, and you can optimize for that step, knowing that obviously you then need to convert those people, whether it's via phone call or email, whatever your sales funnel structure looks like, right? And then you've got app promotion. If you've got an app, obviously the option to use. If you don't use it. You can use app promotion not just for getting more people to install your app, but also for trying to sell in-app events, whether it's like an in-app purchase, for example, as well. For demonstration purposes in this video, I'm going to go ahead and select leads, but what I'm about to talk about very much applies to sales, which I think 90+% of you going through this video should be using either leads or sales. So very much what we go through from now on is sales-based, but the example campaign that I'm going to use is leads-based, so we're going to use that for demonstration purposes. If I go ahead and click continue, there are a few more things that we need to set at the campaign level, okay? So the very first thing at the top is campaign name. You just want to call this something that is going to make sense to you when you're reviewing the campaigns. We've just got the one campaign. It's pretty obvious. Once you've had an ad account running for a few years and you've got lots of different campaigns, you run lots of different offers and promotions, you want to label it up something that makes sense. I'm just going to leave that as a new leads campaign, but I just wanted to quickly note that, okay? So in these campaign details, we've already talked about buying type, we've already talked about campaign objective. I'm not going to bother with the show more options. Then we get into budget, okay? So we've got budget strategy. The default selected here is campaign budget, but we can select ad set budget if we want. And to explain the differences between the two, with campaign budget, the budget is set at the campaign level, meaning that if you have multiple ad sets, budget will be distributed to those ad sets according to performance. So if you've got ad set A that's performing much better than ad set B, ad set A will get more of the budget. However, what you can do instead is select ad set budget and say, no, I want to have manual control over how much each ad set gets from a budget perspective, then you can go ahead and do that. In this instance, the campaign I'm going to demonstrate is only going to have one campaign and one ad set. And in that scenario, it doesn't make any difference whether you set the budget at the campaign level or the ad set level. So I'm just going to leave that as a default, but just wanted to explain the options. If you've got multiple ad sets, there might be something that you want to change. You might be happy just leaving it at the campaign budget, allowing Meta to allocate budget according to performance, because if Meta spends more of our budget on the best performing elements, we get better results, right? Then we've got this budget option down here. The default is daily budget. You can change to lifetime budgets. I prefer daily budgets. With a lifetime budget, you end up with a fixed length campaign. So let's say you want to run a campaign for 7 days or 14 days. You can go ahead and select the lifetime budget, and then Meta is going to spend your money to try and get you as many of your result that you want, what you've selected as your objective as possible, but they're going to do that over that time period. So your spend might be quite lumpy. You might spend very little at the beginning, quite a lot in the middle, very little at the end, or it could be a different combination, whatever Meta thinks will produce the best results. Daily budgets are a lot more flexible and a lot more consistent, and if you want to run a campaign longer, you don't want to, after the 7-day lifetime campaign, have to create a new one and Meta go back through the learning phase and everything like that. We'll talk about more about that later on. Daily budgets allows you to do that. You also have more scalability. You can change the budget with a daily budget campaign more easily without running into issues, okay? So in terms of what to start with, how much should you spend? I've got some guidelines around that. What I recommend, particularly beginners do, is they set a budget that they could afford to lose. So you wouldn't be in financial difficulties, either you or your business, if you ran the ad campaign, you spent this much money on it and it didn't work out. Because it's a marketing campaign. There are no guarantees. You may well need to try a few different offers in your ads in order to find one that lands. You may need to test a few different ads to find one that lands, right? So there's no guarantee it's going to work out really well from day one. Obviously, going through this video is really going to help you and increase your chances of success there, but no guarantees, so let's be smart about this. But on the other hand, you don't want to spend a budget amount that is so small that you don't care about it at all. You don't want to be one of these things where you set it up and just think, whatever, it's going to tick along in the background. You want to be involved and engaged in the process. And I find that there's often a sweet spot where you could afford to lose that money and it wouldn't be disastrous, but it would sting a little. And that's normally a sweet spot where you're really actively in there, but you've given yourself time to be able to test and experiment and work out what can work right there. So I'm just going to leave this as the default, but just that's going to vary massively depending on the business. There's no right amount, which is a question I get asked a lot. For some businesses, that's going to be $10 a day. For others, it's going to be $5,000 a day. Like, varying sizes of businesses, massively different budgets, what matters and what they can afford to lose, very, very different, right? Then we've got campaign bid strategy. Now, this is really important. If I go ahead and click on this, you can see this says, how we'll bid in ad auctions. Highest volume is the default. That's exactly what I want to go with here, because that will determine how Meta optimizes the campaign. Basically, we set this up as a leads campaign and we want the highest volume of leads as possible, right? There are other options. We could add in a cost per result goal or a bid cap to say, I'm only willing to pay a certain amount. Not something I would recommend you mess with as a beginner. So I'm not going to worry about the more settings or the A/B testing. Those are more advanced things you may want to look into later on. I have videos covering them all, but for now we want to make it as simple as possible to get set up and get started. To gain momentum, then you can look to make things more complicated. We do need to talk about special ad categories though. So special ad categories, if your ads fall into any of these categories, right, they're related to financial products and services, employment, housing, social issues, election or politics, then you have to select that that's the case. When you do that, it is going to impact some of the options you have later on through the campaign creation process. So for example, for a lot of these, you're going to have limited targeting options and have to rely more on Meta to be able to work out who to put your ads in front of. It's a way of sort of protecting user privacy and things along those lines. If you do fall within one of these categories, or you think you might fall in one of these categories, definitely select it. If you don't, and then you go ahead and run ads anyway, a good chance not only your ads will be rejected, but your whole ad account can get disapproved, which can then be quite difficult to overturn, or you have to create a new ad account. Not something that you want to deal with. Most of you won't have any of these as an option for, that you'll need to select, and given what it is you're advertising, but for those that do, make sure you go ahead and select them. I'm not going to there. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Okay, so that's the campaign level done. Now we move on to the ad set level, where we've got a bunch of other settings that we need to decide and set things up. So the first we need to choose here is the conversion location. Where do we want these leads to occur? Where do we want them to take place? We've set this up as a leads campaign. Again, very similar process for a sales campaign. Now the default here is website and instant forms. So website is pretty straightforward. It's, I want to generate leads via my website. So send people from Facebook, from Instagram, to my website where they can then book a call or fill out a contact form, a few different types of leads, obviously, where they can go ahead and become a lead. Instant form is a little bit different. That's where you can click on an ad, say within Facebook or Instagram. Instead of going through to your website, you are instead presented with an instant form, a form where people can provide their contact information that then allows you as the business to reach out to them and hopefully progress that lead into a full customer. And with this conversion location selected, you can generate leads either via your website or via instant forms. And Meta will test both, see which performs best, and then allocate budget accordingly. They may also predict for an individual user, is this person more likely to become a lead via a website, or is this person more likely to become a lead via an instant form? So different people might see different ads or different conversion locations go through the process. For the purposes of this video though, and sort of getting started with your Facebook and Instagram ads and keeping things as simple as possible, we talked about that being important, get some results, gain momentum, and then you can look to add in more complicated things. I'm just going to go ahead and select website, because having instant forms there as well means you need to create an instant form. That's a whole extra element as part of the campaign creation process. But you probably already have a website, you probably already have a landing page that you can send people to. That may well want to be improved, but like I said, let's make it as easy as possible to get started and reduce that barrier to entry. And also, if you are running through this, following along with this tutorial, creating a sales campaign, you're an e-commerce business, for example, well, you're not going to have the instant form option, and you're going to want to be sending people through to your website. So we can all sort of follow along if I select website, and I think that's a good option for a lot of beginners. Now, if you don't have a website and you want to get started quickly and easily generating leads via Facebook and Instagram, then you can just go ahead and select instant forms and just have that as an option and not need a website. But I think for most people, they will already have one, most people watching this video, and that's a good way to go. But you can also see there are lots of different ways to generate leads, right? You can generate leads via Messenger, via Instagram, via WhatsApp, calls. So people can call your business. So depending on your business, where you are in the world, for example, WhatsApp's a lot more prevalent in certain parts of the world than others. That might be a really good way to go, where you can start a chat on WhatsApp and look to generate leads that way. You might want to have a play around with this and think about, for your market, for your business, what makes the most sense. And you can always test multiple options. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I actively encourage that sort of thing, as you can often find ways of improving things when you do so. So once we select our conversion location, in this case website, that is going to change what options we have down here. The most important of which being performance goal. So I talked earlier at the campaign creation stage about how important the campaign objective is and getting that right. You can still mess up a good campaign objective selection with a bad performance goal. Because what the campaign objective selection really does is it determines which options you have later on. The performance goal is how Meta is going to optimize your campaign. So let me click in here and we can take a look at the options, right? So the default is maximize number of conversions, but underneath leads goals, we also have maximize value of conversions. Now, maximize number of conversions is absolutely fine if you're advertising the one service, and when someone becomes a lead, they look just as valuable as anyone else who becomes a lead. But if you're advertising multiple services, then it might be that one service, if someone goes on to convert, they're worth $200 to your business. Whereas with another service, if they go on to convert, they're worth $5,000 to your business. There's a massive difference in the value of those two leads, depending on what they've said they're interested in. If you go with maximize value of conversions, then Meta is going to not just try and get you as many conversions as possible, but optimize and weight it in favor of the more valuable conversions. In other words, you might end up paying more in terms of cost per lead, but that's a trade-off you'd be happy to make if you got more leads for the $5,000 service as opposed to the $200 service, right? So this really depends on your business, which one you go with. If you're just advertising the one service within this campaign, absolutely fine to go with maximize number of conversions. But if you've got differing services with differing values, definitely go with maximize value of conversions. Now, in order to track that, you're going to need to make sure that you've got all the tracking set up properly. So you're going to need to have the Meta Pixel installed and the values of each lead being sent back to Meta. I've got a video about pixel installation. You're going to need that if you're sending people to your website, no matter what. You're going to need to have the pixel installed properly. I've also got videos on Conversions API, which is something else that's recommended from a tracking standpoint. So you can check those out because that's an important part of the setup of a campaign creation process of getting started with Facebook and Instagram ads if you are sending people through to your website. Check out those videos. But yeah, that's the difference between those two. If you're running a sales campaign, you have basically the same options, but the wording might be slightly different. And in that scenario, let's say you're an e-commerce business, I would absolutely recommend you go with the value option, with the option that maximizes return on ad spend or maximizes value. Because you can always track differing values because they go straight to your website and purchase there and then. And some people will spend a little bit when they check out. Some people will spend a lot when they check out, and it's really important that you get Meta to optimize for the people that are more likely to spend more when they come through to your website. So definitely go, the wording might be slightly different in terms of what these are called, but you'll see the same options, right? Between just get me as many sales as possible versus get me the most value overall as possible. So act in favor of the higher value purchases, the higher value checkouts, right? In this instance, I'm just advertising the one service with the leads being equally valuable when they become a lead within this campaign. So I'm going to go with maximize number of conversions, but just wanted to talk through that option. Now, what's really, really important, this is what I said a second ago around if you get your performance goal wrong, you can mess up your campaign, even if you've selected the right campaign objective, is do not select one of these other goals. So don't say maximize number of landing page views or link clicks. If you do that, it's going to run just like a traffic campaign and you get lots of clicks, lots of landing page views, probably not many leads, not many sales. Don't go with daily unique reach. That's going to run just like an awareness campaign or maximize number of impressions very similarly, right? So you can mess things up by selecting one of these other goals. Go with the leads goals or the sales goals and you should be all good. Data set, I already talked about the pixel, but just double check to make sure that, yeah, the pixel's installed. This is an example ad accounts. We've got example ad accounts pixel. Like I said, I have other videos you can check out on those. And then we need to choose the specific conversion event that we want to optimize for. So we're saying to Meta, look, get me as many conversions of this conversion as possible. For that, you're gonna have to the pixel set up properly. But yes, we want as many leads as possible. We could change that to schedule or one of the other options that we might want to optimize for as part of our leads campaign. You'll see a similar process for a sales campaign where you can optimize for purchases or you can optimize for add to carts. My preference would be to go for purchases, provided you're generating enough purchases for Meta to be able to learn. We know that that process is important. If not, you might need to go for a step that's higher up the sales funnel, okay? Anyway, moving on. Don't worry about cost per result goal, not something to mess with. Don't worry about value rule sets. We've got a value rule set preview here, but this is very much, because I've demonstrated this as an example ad account in previous videos. I have videos on value rules if you want to check this out. Not something that beginners need to mess with, neither the show more options or the dynamic creative. We get next down into the budget and schedule. Now, we've already talked about the budget being set at the campaign level, and we've talked through the logic of how much you want to spend and you want to go with daily budgets and all that. Here, we really just have now the power to set a start and end date. You might want to set an end date if it just provides some sort of like mental security that, okay, this campaign's not just going to run indefinitely and I'm going to forget about it and end up spending far more than I want. You can go and set an end date. We're going to be in our campaigns plenty enough where we just don't need to worry about that. We're managing them all the time and that sort of thing. And again, I'm not going to mess with show more settings here either. Lots of advanced stuff that we're scooting over, but I think that's helpful when you're getting started. Okay, then we get down into the audience section. And the audience section is all about targeting. And targeting is probably the thing that made, well, originally it was just Facebook ads famous, but even as Instagram was added, that's a thing that got marketers and advertisers excited about the platform, is the ability to be able to target. And there's been a lot of changes to the targeting process, and we're in a very different place than what we were, say, 5-6 years ago. Meta's targeting is still very powerful, but the setup is different. I'll go through it and explain. So within this audience section, we have two main categories. We've got controls and we've got suggest an audience. The difference between these two sections is that anything set within the control section is a hard constraint and hard boundary. So you can see, for example, the location, which I'll talk about in a second, the default here is United Kingdom. Meta's going to basically follow that instruction. Right, we're only going to put ads in front of people in the United Kingdom. Whereas anything added in this suggest an audience section is a suggestion. You're basically giving Meta's targeting algorithms an indication of who you think should see your ads, who your ads should be put in front of. But at the end of the day, it's up to Meta to either go with people within that targeting criteria or find other people that it thinks are likely to get you more of what we talked about up here, which is maximize the number of conversions, lead conversions. Basically, who's likely to become a lead might be outside your targeting criteria, and Meta can go beyond that with the suggest an audience section. So let's run through this. So the first thing we need to decide is location. This is defaulted to the whole of the United Kingdom because that's where I'm based, but that may or may not be right for your business, right? So what should we do here from a targeting standpoint? It's very simple. Advertise where your customers are. That might be one country, that might be the whole of the UK, that might be international. So for example, we could advertise the whole of UK, we could advertise the whole of US. So for example, our major markets as an agency are gonna be UK, US, Australia, Canada. I mean, we actually have clients literally in 50 plus countries, Western Europe and Singapore and UAE and all sorts, right? But our major markets are gonna be UK, US, Canada, etc. So we could, for example, look to advertise to multiple countries. Or if you're a local business, you could get a lot more specific. So let's say, for example, you're a local business based in Bath, which is a place in the UK. So Bath in Somerset. And if I delete out the United States, we can see in the map where we're targeting. So we've got Bath plus 25 miles as the default. You might go, oh no, that's too far. People either aren't willing to travel to us, if you're a local business from that sense, or we're not willing to travel that far, because local business could be either way, right? You could be a plumber traveling to customers, or you could be a cafe with people coming to you. So you go, no, we're going to go with 15 miles around. I think that's more appropriate. Obviously, you can decide this. Now, I don't want you to overthink this. I don't want you to think, well, I'm a local business, but I have to advertise nationally because Meta likes nice big audiences. Like, no, just where your audience are. I also don't want you to artificially constrain the location targeting just because you think that's where the people are who are most likely to be interested in your products or services. So for example, if you sell products nationally in the UK, don't go, oh, I'm only going to advertise in London because people in London are wealthier and they're more likely to buy my products or services. Like, Meta will work that out. And if your best prospects are in a certain location, more of your ad spend will be spent there. But you don't want to artificially constrain it because Meta might find some people that are not in that location that are also great prospects, even if the density of those people in those other locations is lower, right? So basically, where your customers are is good to select. Mm-hmm. One thing to quickly mention about local businesses is you now have this option, which is reach more people likely to respond to your ads and deselect it. So it says here, we'll also show ads to people interested in your selected cities and regions in those countries. So for example, do we want to advertise to people that are interested in the city of Bath or not? A lot of local businesses find that they'll generate leads from people that have had traveled to that location, but if you're a roofer, that's not overly helpful because you're not going to be able to serve those people that live halfway across the country. So a lot of local businesses want to deselect this, even if Meta pops up a warning saying you're likely to see worse results. 6.7% lower cost per result if you select it. Yeah, but what's the point in having a lower cost per lead if you can't service those leads in this scenario? So most local businesses want to deselect this. For demonstration purposes, though, I am going to go with, for the rest of this video, United Kingdom, and just leave it at that, okay? Right, moving on. We've got show more controls. So in show more controls, we've got a minimum age, so you can select anything from 18 up to 25. This is typically recommended if you're advertising something in a particular location and there are legal restrictions on who can and can't buy it. For example, in some places, you need to be 21 to buy certain things, right? So you want to select 21 as your minimum. Otherwise, often best to leave it open. It only goes up to 25. This is not like strict age targeting criteria. This is just for the purposes that I described. Custom audiences, I'll explain in a second. And then we've also got languages, right? So it could be that you can only serve people that speak a certain language within a certain location. If you operate within a country with multiple languages and you think, well, we're only able to serve this market, then you can go ahead and add in specific languages if that's appropriate for your business. Most of the time it's not going to be. You can go with all languages. I'm going to leave that as the default. Then we get down, and that's all you have control over from a hard boundary standpoint. Like, do not go beyond these targeting constraints, please, Meta. Okay, so then we've got the suggest an audience section. So like I said, these are suggestions. This is designed to give Meta particularly helpful when you've got a new Meta ad account, when Meta doesn't know who's likely to become a lead. They don't know that people interested in cats who are 43 and live in this certain location are most likely to buy your products and services, right? As an example. So here we can give Meta some direction. So the first thing we've got is include these custom audiences. And I said I'd talk about custom audiences a second ago. Custom audiences are warm audiences, people who have interacted with your business before. Lots of different types of custom audiences, people who have visited your website, people on your email list, people who have engaged with your Facebook page, your Instagram profile, watched videos of yours, become leads, all sorts. I've got whole tutorials about targeting and setting up custom audiences, and definitely something that you want to do later on. For now, don't worry about it. Firstly, you probably don't have much in the way of custom audiences yet if you're just getting started with your advertising. Secondly, they can always be created and added in later on. Okay, then beneath that we've got age. Now remember, this is a suggestion. So often you want to say to Meta, this is the age range of my ideal prospects, my ideal customers. But again, Meta can choose to go outside that if they think there are people that like to convert. So what we typically do here is not get too restrictive, but just think about like your core demographic, your core target market. So for a business like ours, that's probably going to be something like 30 to 55. In terms of we're looking to reach business owners and marketing professionals and marketing managers. Yes, there's going to be some people younger, some people older, of course, but that might be our core. Then you've got genders. If you skew one way or the other heavily, like 90% men, 90% women, then go ahead and make a selection. Otherwise, it's fine to leave it all. Remember, Meta's going to work a lot of this out for us in terms of who's likely to take the action we want to take. And then we've got detailed targeting. So here we can add in demographics, interest behaviors. You can browse the various categories and look for this, but often what I recommend to get started is just enter in some obvious options that sound about right for your target audience. So for example, we might have something like social media marketing. If I add that in as an option, right? So people interested in social media marketing. As a group of people who might be wanting to target. We could have something like business page admins. So anyone that's an admin of a business page on Meta, then great. We can go ahead and target those people. Couple of simple options. You can add in none here. You can add in 1. You can add in 4. There's no right amount. These are all suggestions. This is just giving Meta direction. Don't spend a ton of time on this. It doesn't matter. I've seen a lot of people get really hung up on this and like to test too much. That's what we used to do a number of years ago, not what we do anymore. You can click on further limit the reach of your ads and then get really specific with the targeting and basically say to Meta, no, I only want to target these people. Not something I'd recommend for most beginners. It overcomplicates it. And typically we see better results now by giving Meta direction and letting Meta's machine learning algorithm work it out, as opposed to us advertisers trying to have too much specific control. Then beneath that, we've got placements. So placements refers to the locations where your ads can be shown. So if we click in here, we can have a look, right? So if I click into more settings and we've got placement controls, included is 24. So we can see, well, actually, if I go above that, we've got platforms. So we've got the 5 platforms currently: Facebook, Instagram, Audience Network, Messenger, or Threads, the places where ads can be shown. And we can say, no, I don't want any of my ads to be shown on Threads. Not sure why you do that, but you can if you want. Audience Network is typically considered the lower quality placement option. Audience Network is going to refer to things you'll have interacted with these before, where you sort of click through on something on Meta and you come through to like an article or an app or something along those lines. That's going to be Audience Network. So sometimes advertisers will look to deselect those. I'll explain that in a second. And then if we click into placements, we can see all the various options, right? So we can break it down by all the different feeds and say, no, I don't want to advertise on feeds, or I only want to advertise on stories and reels, or et cetera, right? So what would my recommendation be here for setting this up? If you are using a leads campaign or a sales campaign, just leave it as is. Basically, let Meta run ads on all placements, because they're only going to put your ads on those placements that Meta thinks are going to get you the result that you've asked for a lead, for a sale. So absolutely fine. If, however, you are forced to run a different campaign objective like traffic because you cannot track the leads or sales that you generate, then I do think you want to become more specific, and the obvious option is just to get rid of the Audience Network. Because what you don't want is for Meta to put your ads on the placement options that are lower quality, less likely to lead to a conversion, but that's exactly what Meta will do if you're not optimizing for a conversion, because those placements are cheaper. Other advertisers aren't as interested in those, therefore the cost is lower. Remember, the price is set by simple demand and supply, and yeah, so you might want to come in and deselect Audience Network if you aren't able to track conversions. Most of you will be. You'll have the pixel set up and you're all good. Then you can go ahead with just the default, which is everywhere, all 24 placement options and all 5 platforms. Run A/B tests, great thing to do later on, not something I'm going to worry about right now. All this stuff here of brand suitability and inventory filters and all that sort of stuff, that is beyond the scope of what most beginning advertisers want to get into. You can get really lost in this. It's basically you as an advertiser having more control around what your ads are put alongside, the context around them, all those sorts of things. A thing that a lot of big brands care about quite a lot because they really care about their brand image. I personally don't feel like what your ad is around when a user is seeing your ad in context of other stuff that they see on Facebook and Instagram is that important. I think it kind of operates as an isolated thing anyway. We're sort of used now to scrolling through reels or stories and you see very different things, right? Different contexts. They're not necessarily one is associated with the other straight after. So I don't feel like it's a big deal, but bigger brands find this sort of stuff quite important and often mess around with it significantly. Most of the time it hurts results, but not something you need to worry about as beginners. And that is the ad set taken care of. So now let's go ahead and jump over to the ad level. Okay, so now it's time for the ad level, the most interesting part, the level that determines what people actually see when they're presented with your Facebook and Instagram ads. First thing at the top here to quickly mention is partnership ads. Love partnership ads, allow you to run ads with creators and influencers to help promote your products and services. These are awesome. Not something for beginners. You want to get started with simpler campaigns first, but definitely look to add this in later on. I have content all about them. Then you've got identity. So make sure that the Facebook page, Instagram account, and Threads profile that your ads are going to come from on those various platforms are all correct. I see people make errors here. And by the way, those are my accounts. If you want more information on Facebook and Instagram advertising, go ahead and give me a follow on whichever you typically use. Branding's more an advanced thing. Don't need to worry about that. Then we get into ad setup. So we've got create ad, which is the default. You could also use existing post. So if you already have a post, say on your Instagram profile that's done well, and you think, oh, I want to run that as an ad, you can go ahead and select existing post, choose it, and go for it. Most of you are going to want to be creating ads, and that's typically what I'd recommend. When you use existing posts, some of the functionality is a bit limited because it already exists as a post as opposed to having full flexibility of an ad. And also in terms of what you put out there as, say, organic posts on Facebook and Instagram versus what you use as ads, there's normally differences in the content that's used. So when you're running ads, you're normally gonna have a stronger call to action and things like that, right? So typically you're gonna be creating ad. So we're gonna go ahead and use manual upload. Advantage Plus catalog ads, again, slightly more of an advanced thing, not something I'm going to cover here, but just to know that if you are an e-commerce business and you want to run, you have a catalog, you want to run ads using a catalog, this is a great way to go, particularly for retargeting warm audiences, people who have maybe checked out a product but haven't yet converted. So definitely something to look to add in later on. I've got content on that you can find on my channel. But for now, we're going to go with manual upload. Next, choose the format. Do we want a single image or video? That's what I'm going to go with here. I'm going to use an image. Like I said, I want the campaign creation setup for you guys to be as easy as possible to get started, but you can run carousels. Carousels are like cards of different, so you've got an image with some, like a headline, another image with a headline, another image headline, some pricing information, sometimes extra info. You've probably seen carousels before. Multi-advertiser ads. Honestly, we've tested this and we don't really see any difference whether we have this selected or deselected. So I'm happy to leave it on. Multi-advertiser ad says your ad can appear with others in the same ad unit to help promote discoverability. Doesn't seem to make much difference either way. So happy to leave that on. And then we get on to destination. Now your destination is where people are going to be sent after they click on your ads. So because we selected website as the conversion location at the ad set level, we need to enter in a website URL. So this could be a product page if you're advertising a product, could be a specific landing page for a service, could be even maybe the home page of your website, wherever it is that you want to send people directly. So I'm going to go ahead and paste a link in here just to quickly explain what we're going to be using as the example, because I've got an example campaign I'm going to quickly put together, an example ad I'm going to put together to help you understand the process. So we have a thing called my Meta Ads mentorship program, and just to quickly explain what that is, included in it we've got unlimited one-to-one support. People can ask us any questions they've got about their Meta Ads. It's designed to provide them all the support they need to get the best possible results from Facebook and Instagram ads. We do daily live calls and Q&As with me and my expert team members. We've got exclusive educational material, that sort of thing, right? That's the offer that we're going to be advertising. By the way, if you are interested in that, there's a link in the video description. But that's what we're going to be using as the offer. So just give you a bit of context around that before we move on. So I've gone and entered in the URL to the landing page for people to come through and book a call. And when we run ads for our Meta Ads mentorship program, which we do all the time, that's exactly where people are sent, straight through to this page where they can go ahead and book a call. Once you enter in the URL, you'll start to see the preview over here, which is really useful. You can't see much yet, but as we add in things like ad creative and ad copy, we'll be able to see what it looks like for the user that's actually going to see it over here in the preview, which is helpful. So we have this first option called display link. So you can see here we've got admasters365.com, which is the link that I've added in up here. We could change that using display link if we want to. I don't want to here, just wanted to quickly highlight that it's an option. Then we've got these browser add-ons. The default is none, and that's what I'd recommend you go with for now. I think that some of this stuff gets a little bit too complicated, a little bit too advanced for beginners. You can add, for example, a call button to your website, an Instagram direct button on your website, people to be able to message you via Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. Something you might want to mess around with later on. In general, we don't tend to use these because we want people to take a very specific path, as in they come through to a website or a landing page and they take the one action we're sort of leading them to take, as opposed to confusing them with various different actions. But your business might be like, no, I'd love a phone call, or very happy to chat with people via WhatsApp. Then you can go ahead and set those up. Instant experience, again, not something we're going to worry about as part of this tutorial, and the same with Facebook event. If you are advertising a Facebook event, you're going to have to go through that, but the vast majority watching this are not going to fall into that category. Then we get into the add creative section, right? So we've got setup creative, and then we can choose between image ad and video ad. Like I said previously, video ads can perform really, really well. Image ads are much simpler for people to create, and I'd often recommend that advertisers get started there. You can always look to produce more sophisticated ad creative, things like video later on. I've got video tutorials showing you how to do that. You can find on my channel, but we're going to start nice and simple, reduce that barrier to entry, and go with image ad. And once you select image ad, the first thing that's going to happen is Meta's going to try and add in these various extensions. So we've got some branding information here, stuff that Meta's going to use to try and work out when they produce AI generated assets. You'll see what that looks like in a second. And they're going to use this information that we add in here. And then we've got site links, right? So Meta's going to add in extra links to other pages on our website, where people can go directly instead of the main one that we're looking to send people to. So in our case, site links could be things like sending people through to a case studies page or to a how it works page or something like that, right? I think for beginners to get started, we want to make this straightforward. Don't worry about adding in any of the branding stuff. We're not going to rely too heavily on the AI generated assets for now anyway. And I'd also probably turn off site links. It might be really appropriate for your business. You might think, no, great, I'm coming maybe from a Google Ads world where you're used to site links. But if you don't have experience with that, it's added complication at this stage. It's another thing to worry about. And again, I don't really want, when I'm running my ads, people to come through to other pages on my site. I want them to come through to the one place I want to come through, which is a landing page where they can go in and book a call. So I'm going to ignore this stuff for now. I'd recommend you do the same to get started with. Okay, and then we get to media. So a few different places where you can grab the imagery or videos that you're going to use. You can get them from your Instagram account, you can get them from your Facebook page, you can get them from your ad account if you've uploaded previously. Well, we've obviously got a bunch of options here because this is an example ad account, so I upload stuff to be able to demonstrate, but just wanted to highlight that if you've already got stuff. Or you can just go ahead and click upload over here and select any files that you've got from your computer and get those uploaded. Very straightforward. I've actually already uploaded the files that I'm going to use for demonstration purposes. Like I said, we run ads for my Meta Ads mentorship program already, so we have image ads that I can literally demonstrate. So I'm going to go ahead and select this option and click next. And you can see that when you add in your ad creative, Meta's going to show you what it looks like in the three main formats, so three main aspect ratios, right? You've got square, you've got vertical, and you've got horizontal. Now, horizontal is by far the least important because as a proportion of your ad impressions, horizontal is going to be the fewest by far. Most of your ad impressions are going to be from a square ad format or a vertical ad format. Square is typically going to be used for things like the feeds, Facebook, Instagram feeds, lots of feed options. Vertical is going to be things like stories, reels across both platforms. Now, what you can see is that because I've uploaded a square image, it works brilliantly for the square format, but in the vertical and horizontal, not so great. So in an ideal world, what you would do is you would either crop if possible. So let's say we turn that to 9:16 and try and make it, that just doesn't work, right? It cuts off all the text. It just won't work at all as an ad. So we can't do that. Ideally, you would either crop and change the dimensions, or you would replace it with a different image that is specifically designed and formatted for that aspect ratio, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click replace there, and we've got a vertical one that's been selected. Go ahead and put back. You see that looks much better in that format, right? You don't need to do this. This is kind of an optional extra. Meta is really smart nowadays, so they would have taken this image and probably made something fairly similar looking to this using like image expansion, and they'll fill in the top and bottom for vertical locations, and they'll do something with this to make it look good. But just wanted to highlight that if you have the capacity to spend a little bit more time and effort on the creative and make sure it looks good in the various placement options, then doing so can be a good way to go. Right, just to quickly highlight the image as well. So this is obviously really simple, what we've got here. So it's a picture of me. Mostly when we're advertising our mentorship program, it's to warm audiences. People have already exposed to my business. People are unlikely to sign up for a mentorship program if they don't know who the person is that's going to be mentoring them, right? So because of the nature of this offer, it's warm audience specific. So we definitely want a photo of me in there that's going to help grab attention. Very simple text on the image, want me to mentor you. Very clear what this offer is all about, and then it's kind of small, hopefully you can see it, but we've basically just got 3 testimonials highlighted. You know, almost an 8x ROAS in 3 weeks from someone, made $29,000 with a 7.3x ROAS in 30 days, from €30 a day ad spend to 100k a month in sales in just 3 months. So differing degrees of spend and success, but just a few quick snippets that people can look and be like, wow, I'd love a result like that, or results like that for my business. So it's relatively easy to replicate something like this, even if you don't have much in the way of graphic design skills and things like that. Right, anyway, moving on. So let's go ahead and click next. Now we get into the text, into the ad copy section. So the first part is primary text. Now in different placement options, the copy and the text appears in different locations. But if you think about like a traditional Facebook feed on mobile, you're going to have the primary text above the image, then you're going to have the image, then you're going to have the headline underneath it, and then beneath that you're going to have the description and the call to action button off to the side. Okay, so that's typically how it's going to work. So let me grab a primary text that I've got that we've used to advertise my Meta Ads Mentorship program, and all the stuff I'm adding in here is stuff that has worked well, and it's good to learn from real life examples that have performed well. So let's do that. Okay, so I've just pasted in the primary text, and if I just quickly read this so that you understand the sort of thing I'd recommend you go with and what we're looking to do here. So we've got tired of wasting money on Facebook ads that don't deliver? We'll mentor you daily to explode your revenue. Limited spots available, apply now and transform your ad game, and then we've got the link. Now that is a very short, simple piece of ad copy, but it actually ticks a lot of boxes, and that's what I recommend you try and replicate. We don't want to be writing essays, people just aren't going to be bothered to read it. But we're doing a number of things here. So we're highlighting the problem and calling out the target audience with the first sentence. Tired of wasting money on Facebook ads that don't deliver? So anyone that is suffering from that problem is likely to pay attention to the rest of the ad. It also is sort of agitating that problem. We're emphasizing like, oh, are you really annoyed that you keep trying and it's just not working? Then we've got, we'll mentor you daily to explode your revenue. So we've got a feature, what's involved in this? Oh, it's a daily mentorship, gotcha. To explode your revenue, great, that's exactly what I do. I really want exploded revenue, so there's a benefit associated. Limited spots available, introducing scarcity. Apply now and transform your ad game. And there's a call to action. So you can see in just a couple of sentences, we've ticked like a load of boxes, right? We've called out the audience, we've agitated the problem, we have described the main feature, the main benefit associated with it, we've introduced scarcity, and we've got a call to action. All in, tick 6 different things there, 6 or 7 different things within just a couple of sentences. So something like that, obviously tailored to your offer, your business, is likely to do well. Right, then what we've got here is Meta's going to use AI to generate text alternatives, and they're going to do that, you can see here, tailor variations to personas. So they've come up with 3 different personas that they think like basically avatars, target customer avatars. We've got ambitious entrepreneurs, digital marketers, and small business owners. So Meta's like, look, if we think that someone in your target audience is an ambitious entrepreneur, we're going to put this primary text in front of them. Now they may use other options as well, but we can take a look through these and decide which we do and don't want to use, right? So my recommendation with everything AI generated, copy, imagery, is absolutely use it, but you need to be the filter as the advertiser, because sometimes it's going to be great, you can just use it. Other times some of the suggestions are not going to work at all, you can't use them. Sometimes it's going to be a bit of a hybrid where you go, well, that's kind of good, but does need a little bit of this changing and that changing to make it work. So we just quickly read this first option. We've got tired of throwing money at Facebook ads don't deliver, unlock explosive revenue growth with daily mentorship, limited spots available, apply now and transform your ad game. So, I mean, that's very, very similar to what we've got already. Like, happy to just include that. Stop wasting ad spend on underperforming Facebook ads. Get daily mentorship to scale revenue and transform your ad game, limited spots available, level up your expertise and maximize ROI with proven strategies. Yeah, all good. So you might find that there are options that you're like, no, I don't want to use, but but you can look to add these in. And if I just scroll back up as well, you'll see that primary text we've got here 1 of 5, so you can have up to 5 different options. Absolutely fine just to go with the one if you just want to get started. You can always add other ones in later on, but a good idea to test multiple options because it just increases the chance that A, you'll find an option that works really well, and B, it gives Meta more flexibility. Look, like they've said, we might put this ad copy in front of this type of persona and this type of ad copy. So basically they're working out different people within your target audience and what they are most likely to respond to. Much more of a tailored ad delivery experience, which can help improve performance, okay? Right, then we move on to the headline. And then this is a headline that worked well for us, which is just very simply daily Facebook ads mentorship, right? We can add headline options again, so you can see it's 1 of 5, the same principle applies. You can have 5 headlines and I would recommend it. And Meta's going to AI generate some options for you. Just quickly run through. So we've got explode your ad revenue now. Yeah, that's fine. Unlock ad mastery in 5 minutes daily. Well, it's not really how the mentorship program is designed to work. It's not 5 minutes daily. We have like live calls, Q&As that last longer. We have training that lasts longer. You could do 5 minutes a day. You could do longer. So I don't like that option. It's not good for our offer. I'm not going to go through every single one here, but you can just see the sort of process I'm going through and the logic I'm going through there of deciding what to choose and what not to choose. Daily mentorship for ad success sounds good. I have other videos more detailed on ad copy, by the way, in case you want to go through these. Right, then we've got description. So this isn't going to appear on every placement options, but like I said, in the classic sort of mobile Facebook feed, it's going to be just under the headline. So we might go with something like limited spots available in order to emphasize the scarcity and there are limited spots available. We only have so many coaches and so many slots available on the live calls and Q&As and things. So yeah, absolutely fine to put that in there. Yours might be a scarcity thing, or it might be urgency based, like we're running a current sale, but that ends at a certain time. There are ways to incentivize that action. And then we've got call to action button here, right? So what you see here will depend on what type of campaign you're running. So if you're running a sales campaign, you might see some slightly different options, although we can still see things like shop now, for example, even with the leads campaign. Learn more is the default. What I'd recommend here is you just go with the option that best describes what it is you want people to do. Like, what's the next step? With a mentorship style offer, something that people aren't necessarily super familiar with, it's not as obvious as other things that people are used to buying all the time, then we might have something different. We might go with contact us, or we might go with schedule a call or something like that. But I think learn more is the appropriate next option. In other businesses, service businesses, it might be get quote is the next thing. It might be shop now. Lots of different options depending on what it is that you are looking to do. Don't overthink it, just go with the option that best describes the next step. Right, then we go with next. Now what Meta's going to do is they're going to take the image that you've added in and they're going to use AI to generate other versions. So this is a tool that is improving all the time and it's very interesting that it's doing so. And by the time you watch this, you might see that the options have improved again substantially. So if we look at what Meta's looking to do here, they've basically, most of these are just changing background colors, for example, or changing the location. So that room behind me actually looks like one of our meeting rooms in our office, which might be coincidence, or they may have found it elsewhere. But like, that's basically the same image as what we've got, but it's a different color scheme. Like, yeah, sure, happy to use that. Again, same with that one, although maybe the text isn't as good to read, but there are options that we absolutely can't lose. So it's, for example, want me to mentor you, and they've sort of AI generated a woman there. Like, it has to be me in these ads, right, in order for this process to work. Want me to mentor you without me in the thing? That's just not going to work. This is mostly advertised to warm audiences. That version of me is like, I guess it's kind of me, but not really. Kind of looks a little bit like someone else, or you know, I guess we can't use that, right? It has to actually be me in there. These options down the bottom obviously wouldn't work. So you could be the filter. You might find some work really well. What you see here will absolutely depend on what you upload. And for some businesses, you're going to see better options than others. So if you're uploading an image, for example, of a product, the AI generated image options can work really well because Meta's going to use different backgrounds or put them into different scenes. Whereas when you're using people in your ads, particularly if that person needs to be the same person involved, like it is here, less so. But when I did this video a year ago, it didn't come up with any versions of me at all. So we just couldn't use any of the AI generated images. Now we can. You can see this is improving all the time. So just add in the ones you're happy with. The Meta's basically going to test different variations, see which works best, right? Fairly straightforward. Okay. Let me go ahead and click next, and then we've got enhancements. So these are things that Meta's going to do to try and improve the quality of our ad creative in order for us to get better results, or at least test it, right? So we can see we've got 3 for review. So Meta's decided, you know, we don't think that having these on makes a lot of sense. Let's have these turned off, and then they've turned on 7 that we could also review. So for example, they said, we don't think it's best to have enhanced media text, so we'll replace the text in your media, not in the ad copy, in your media, with AI generated text. Yeah, I don't want that. We want the message to be clear and consistent. That could go wrong. And then we've got translate text turned off. Yeah, we don't want the text to be translated into other languages because we can only provide the mentorship program in English. You know, me and my expert team members that run the program, we speak English and we operate in English, right? So we want to translate to other languages because we can't then fulfill in those other languages. And then Meta have also turned off enhanced CTA, which I'm absolutely happy with. Let's have a quick look at the other active enhancements. So these are things that Meta has turned on and is saying, look, we think these are going to help improve performance. So we've got ad overlays, right? So they can add text overlays over the top of the image to highlight certain things, grab things from the landing page or the ad copy. You know, with an image like this, I probably would actually turn that off because look, it's already really text heavy. If it was less text heavy, I'm happy to leave it on because the overlays can often improve performance. So I'm going to turn that off. Then we've got visual touch-ups. Okay, so we'll automatically crop, expand your chosen media to fit more placements. Well, we've kind of done that to some extent with the 3 main formats. Normally, I'm happy for that to stay though. Meta's pretty good at making that make sense to add in. Add music, so they basically turn your image into like a short video, add some music overlay. I'm happy to leave that on. I totally get some businesses aren't. They want to be much more specific of like, no, I couldn't possibly have that audio. You can customize this, so you can leave this on. What have they got for us for now? Just a little like corporate jingle, basically. Like, that's fine, I'm happy to do that. You can customize and then say, no, I want specifically to play this music, not that music, or you can just go ahead and turn that off. Text improvements, so any text you provide may appear as primary text headline description. So you know we wrote in the various locations, Meta saying, we might choose to move this around, right? So you know one of those headline options, we might just stick that in the primary text, or we might change the description. I'm normally quite happy to leave that on. Sometimes that will mean the ad doesn't make sense, depending on how you've constructed your copy, in which case you want to turn that off. In our case, for example, that primary text can't be used as a headline because it's too long. So that just won't happen. But again, you can customize that or turn that off depending on what you want to do. I'm normally happy to leave it on because if Meta, for example, wanted to switch my description, my headline, which is how it would work in reality, given the copy we set up, like, no biggie. Adapt multi-image format. So we'll show ads with multiple images as a video or slideshow or a video collection. Now, we haven't got multiple images in there. It's already on. They might use the different variations that we had to try and create something. Again, I'm kind of happy for Meta to play with this and do what it can. If Meta creates anything or adds variations and additions based on the ad creative that we've uploaded that kind of doesn't work and doesn't make sense, well, as soon as they put it in front of users, they won't take action because it doesn't make sense. And they'll very quickly learn and stop doing that and test other options. So I don't think this adds much or really makes any difference to this particular ad. If you were running like a carousel or had an ad campaign with lots of different images, then this could be really quite valuable. So I'd recommend normally leaving that on. We've got ad animation. So Meta can basically turn this image into something that can move. They can animate text, various elements. Again, happy to leave that on. And then we've got flex media. So show media you chose for a specific aspect ratio across all placements when it's likely to improve performance. So you know how we had the square versus the vertical? Well, what Meta's basically saying here is like, look, we might go ahead and use the square in the vertical placement, or we might go ahead and use the vertical format that you gave us in, say, the feeds, where it will actually take up basically your whole screen as you're scrolling through a feed if we think it improves performance. Again, quite happy for Meta to work that out. So this is very much go through, decide the ones you want to use, decide the ones you don't want to use. I would err on the side of trusting Meta with this, highly incentivized to improve stuff to help us get better performance. But I know a lot of advertisers are nervous about that. They want to turn these off and to be like, no, just put the ad as is in front of people. That's, I totally get that. That's fine too. These typically don't make a huge amount of difference whether you have them on or off either way. Okay, so now we can start to see the preview come together, right? We've got, so for example, this option here, this is like a Facebook feed. We've got the text, the primary text, we've got the image, we've got the headline. We can't see the description here. Like I said, it's not going to show on all placements. We've got the learn more call to action button. We've got the image, we've got the other image variations that Meta's come up with. And then we can see, via, there's lots of things you can go through in the preview. So you can see via different locations. So we've got Facebook feed there. It's taking a second to load. We can have a look at what it looked like on the Instagram feed. So like the primary text at the top. You just go through the various placement options and just make sure it all makes sense. If you set it up how I have, you're basically going to be fine. Got a warning to add product or site links, but no, I'm all good for what that is. And we went through that window. You can adjust it from within here as well. So if you're like, okay, I started with the one primary text, but I want to add in some other primary text, you can go ahead and do so and get those added in here. Same's going to apply to headlines. And then we've obviously got this other stuff, description, optimized text per person. You can leave that as enabled. That was based on the creative enhancement we talked about. And then we've got call to action, learn more, absolutely fine. Run A/B tests to see the results. Not yet. Definitely something to do later down the line once you've got a little bit more experience with your meta ads, but right now, happy to leave that off. And we can also go back in and edit these creative enhancements. So we ended up with 6 out of 10 on going through that process, but you can change that should you wish to. Creative testing, so we can set up different tests between different ads. So let's say we had one image and we wanted to test that, not just like different variations like we've got here, but against totally other images. You can absolutely do that within the one ad unit. Not something I want you to mess with for now. But yeah, just know it's an option. Same's going to apply to languages for the vast majority of you. Just going to go with the one language. Then we get into tracking. Here, basically, you just want to make sure that you can see the pixel, and you need to have, like we talked about before, if you're generating leads, generating sales by your website, you need to have the pixel installed. Ideally, you would also have the conversions API installed, and you would have all that tracking set up. I have other videos that cover that. But here's where you just basically come down and just check that the pixel is actually here and that that's the right pixel. You can check the ID based on what you set up. I've seen issues go down. And what it's basically saying is that Meta's going to track these ads. We can add in other things if that's appropriate for a business, like URL parameters to track if you're that way inclined and you do a lot of tracking, say via Google Analytics or another platform, and you want to cross-reference things and really understand your data, you can go ahead and add those in. But I think most beginners, that is probably overkill. And then that is our campaign setup. We can go ahead and click publish. Meta's normally going to take a bit of time to review the ad, make sure it complies with advertiser policies. Normally takes about 30 minutes, but particularly with your first ads could take a while more. And then you should start to see your ads being delivered, and you can quickly have a look at the data generated. So if I just close down a campaign, we won't have any here, but you'll be able to see things like your cost per result. You'll be able to see impressions, how many times are our ads seen, how many people has it reached, all the various data points. There's lots of other things. I've got other videos on analytics and analyzing data and what to look for and how to optimize campaigns and things like that. But that is the process of getting your first or a proper Facebook ad campaign set up. If you've already created them but weren't 100% sure that you set up everything correctly, that is how you do it. Now, I quickly want to touch on campaign structure. So what I demonstrated here is one campaign, one ad set, one ad, although there are a few variations of things like primary text headlines and the images themselves within that ad. And that is absolutely fine to get started with. I've talked about throughout this video, keeping it simple, making it as straightforward as possible. You can make things really complicated should you wish to later on, but let's keep it simple to start with, easy to understand, easy to set up. As you go on, you're going to want to add other things, probably other campaigns for things like different services, different product ranges, certainly different ads to be able to test different creators. I've got a video on campaign structure you can find on my channel, and you can go through that in a lot more detail, but fine to get started with this current structure. And then in terms of what to watch next, I recently recorded a video talking about exactly what I would do if I was starting Facebook ads all over again today. And I think that would be a really good thing for you to watch next. You can check it out here. I go through what you need to focus on, what you don't need to focus on. You now know how to create a Facebook ad campaign from scratch, but there's more to it than that. There's other considerations that I cover in this video here.